Okay, bienvenidos. Welcome back for another week. Here we are, lesson 2, the second part. We're going to talk today about the present tense conjugation of AR verbs. It's not going to mean a whole lot to you, but it will right away. So let's get going. We're going to talk about a couple different concepts that are just grammar concepts, the same in English or in Spanish. And one is a verb expresses action. So I run, you run, I talk, we eat. Those are all actions that we're doing, as well as they express states of being. The verb be, for example, we already learned ser. When we say I am, that's not expressing an action, it's expressing a state of being. We talk about time. Son las dos, it's 2 o'clock. That's not expressing an action, it's expressing a state of being. It is 2 o'clock. So verbs are 2 different kinds. We're going to talk about typically action verbs today, and each verb in English and in Spanish has 2 forms, an infinitive and a conjugated form. So the infinitive form is the base or the unconjugated form of a verb. In English, we use the word to designate that. So to be or not to be, to eat, to run, to study, those are all infinitive forms, and then the verb gets conjugated from there. So in English, the verb to be gets conjugated I am, you are, he, she is, we are, y'all are, they are. So those are conjugated forms of those verbs. The infinitive has a to with it. The conjugated forms are different forms of that infinitive verb. The infinitives in Spanish are easy to recognize because every single one of them ends in either AR, ER, or IR. So 3 different forms of verbs in Spanish. AR is the most common by far, ER, and then IR in that order. Not that that matters, but we're going to start with AR because they're the most common verbs in Spanish. So across the bottom, I've got an example of 3 common verbs. An AR verb, estudiar, which means to study. An ER verb, comer, one of my favorite things, to eat. And an IR verb, maybe one of your favorite things to do, escribir, to write. So verbs end in either AR, ER, or IR. To be called a regular verb, which implies there are irregular verbs, and you will learn that. Regular verbs follow a specific pattern for the conjugation. How we get to each of those forms, the I, the you, the he, the we, the y'all form, that's conjugation. And regular verbs, which for AR verbs are the majority, follow a specific pattern that we're going to learn about. We also are going to talk about the present tense. Present tense means what is happening right now. It talks about an action in the present or an action that's ongoing or habitual. I eat, I am eating. I talk, I speak, I study. That's what's happening right now in the present tense. So we're going to talk about how to conjugate AR verbs, regular AR verbs, in the present tense. I'm going to show you 2 different ways because everybody learns differently. If we were in person here, I'd get feedback from you on if this made sense, and if not, I'd find a different way to explain it to you. Since we can't do that on this type of class, again, my Zoom hours are open, and if you need some specific training or need it explained to you a different way, then just reach out. We can go through that for sure. So we're going to learn how to conjugate regular AR verbs in the present tense. Notice what it says in the box. To conjugate a verb, simply drop the infinitive ending, the AR, the ER, or the IR, and add the new ending according to the subject. So in the box in the graph, you have the yo form for the verb estudiar, which means to study, is estudio. You can see highlighted there in the yellow band, o, as, a, amos, ais, and an. And each one of those correlates with a different pronoun, the different parts of the pronouns. The yo form then for estudiar is estudio. The tú form is estudias. The third person singular, usted, él, or ella, is estudia. The nosotros form is estudiamos. The vosotros form, which I told you we're not really going to focus on, is estudiáis. And the third person plural for ustedes, ellos, ellas, is estudian. So we're taking the infinitive, taking off that AR ending, and then adding the appropriate conjugated ending to come up with a different parts of a conjugated verb, for in this case, the verb estudiar. You all know I love my verb trees. The verb tree again shows first, second, third person on the side and singular and plural across the top. And so it's really a matrix for you to plug and play. We looked at this last week as far as the pronouns that fit into that graphic. And then today we're going to look at these same verb endings. So these are the same things on the last page, more written out. But the endings are o, as, a, amos, ais, and an. That's what you want to memorize. Learn that. And those are the regular AR verb conjugated endings. So class, I'm going to have you repeat after me. O, as, a, amos, ais, and an. Okay, as we mentioned, the vosotros form, the second person plural, is used exclusively in Spain. So we're going to ignore that. We're going to X that out. As I repeat to you, I just instinctively do this. I will not repeat the ais form, the vosotros form now, but I will have a little pause because in my brain, I'm going through this matrix and there's an empty spot there on that second person plural. So you'll hear me as I repeat out. There will be a pause to where the vosotros form would be. And if you are planning on going to Spain, let me know. And we can make sure that you understand how that vosotros form is conjugated. But it's just so rarely used, especially in Latin America. Okay, so we have our AR regular present tense endings. O, as, a, amos, an. For example, you take that verb, you conjugate it. So Juan Carlos, going backwards, right? Juan Carlos would correlate with él, so third person singular, the a. So Juan Carlos estudia ciencias ambientales. That is, you saw that in the lesson we had earlier this week on la universidad, right? That's one of the subject matters, one of the classes. So Juan Carlos estudia, studies, environmental sciences. So we've taken that verb estudiar, we took out the AR ending, we have estudi, which is the stem, and we've added a because it correlates with the third person singular form. Y tú, Miguel, y tú que estudias, Miguel. So the tú form is indicating to us we're talking second person singular, right? We're talking to, in this case, she's talking to Miguel. So we take off the AR from estudiar, we get estudi, and then we add AS because that's the ending that correlates with second person singular. So, y tú que estudias, Miguel. And you, what do you study, Miguel? Okay, so again, in explanation form, to review, to create the form for most regular verbs in Spanish, drop the infinitive ending. What you have left is called the stem. For example, hablar, which means to speak, to talk, has the stem habl because we dropped the AR ending. And then you go from infinitive to stem to add the appropriate ending, and you have your conjugated verb. Muy bien. So one more time, just another review, another way to look at it. To make that, to conjugate the verbs, you drop the AR, the final vowel plus the R from the infinitive, you add the stem, and then you add the ending that matches. So again, just some different ways of looking at it to help you to grasp this concept of conjugating verbs in Spanish. All right, so we're going to look here a couple different ways of to make sentences with your conjugated verbs. So a sentence needs a subject, a noun, right? And then in this case, we have a direct object, which is the language. We're going to use the verb hablar, to speak or to talk, as our example. We're going to take hablar, we're going to conjugate it through each of the conjugation forms. We're going to add a different kind of language to make a full sentence. I speak Spanish, French, German, Italian, etc. So I'm going to have you repeat after me. We'll start from the top. Clase, repitan. Yo hablo español. I speak Spanish. Then repeat, yo hablo español. Got it. Tú hablas francés. You speak French. Usted habla alemán. You speak German. Él habla italiano. He speaks Italian. Ella habla portugués. She speaks Portuguese. Now go to our plural ones. Nosotros hablamos español. We speak Spanish. Vosotros habláis francés. You speak French. Ustedes hablan alemán. Y'all speak German. Ellos hablan italiano. They speak Italian. Ellas hablan portugués. They, females, speak Portuguese. All right, so you formed complete sentences. You got your subject, you got your verb. In this case, you have an object. So you see how easy it is to put all these different parts of speech together to speak in Spanish. All right, here's a list of common verbs that you're going to need to memorize. This is your vocabulary for this lesson, are these verbs. These are all regular AR verbs. Now, there are two different colors. I've got 3 verbs that are underlined in blue, and I've got 4 parts of verbs that are underlined in red, and we'll come back to those in just a second. But I'm going to go through, I'm going to repeat again. I'm going to repeat the verb in Spanish, have you repeat it in Spanish, and then I'm going to say the meaning in English, and I want you to repeat it in Spanish again. So again, we're using all of our senses to see, to hear, to speak. It'll help you learn these verbs a lot faster. So clases repitan. Bailar, to dance. Buscar, to look for. Caminar, to walk. Cantar, to sing. Cenar, to have dinner. Comprar, to buy. Comprar. Contestar, to answer. Conversar, to converse or chat. Desayunar, to eat breakfast. Descansar, to rest. Desear, to desire or to wish. Dibujar, to draw. Enseñar, to teach. Escuchar, to listen to. Esperar, to wait for, to hope. Estudiar, to study. Explicar, to explain. Hablar, to talk, to speak. Llegar, to arrive. Llevar, to carry. Mirar, to look at, to watch. Mirar. Necesitar, to need. Practicar, to practice. Preguntar, to ask a question. Preparar, to prepare. Regresar, to return. Terminar, to end, to finish. Tomar, to take, to drink. Trabajar, to work. Viajar, to travel. Viajar. Okay, muy bien. Just gonna have to learn, commit those to memory. Some of them have what we call cognates to them. It means they look similar. Estudiar, you can see the word study in there. Latin or Spanish and English both have Latin roots. So one easy way to learn these is to think of a word in English that may look similar to the word in Spanish. All right, so, well, let me go back. So the verbs that I have in blue, desear, esperar, necesitar, are verbs that have a context when put with another verb. For example, desire, I wish to walk, right? We have 2 verbs, both I desire and to walk, both refer to me. So as long as both verbs refer to the same person, right? Whether that's me or you or him or her or we, any of those parts of speech, as long as they're referring to the same person, then you don't conjugate the second verb. You leave it in the infinitive. So that's why desear, I desire. Caminar, to walk. Yo deseo caminar. I desire to walk. Now note, because we've been learning that the infinitives in English, we say to walk. We don't add a word for to in there. that to walk is inherent in that infinitive. So you don't add an extra word. I hear many non-native English or Spanish speakers who try to add a second word in there, and that's not only is it not needed, it's not correct. So deseo caminar, I desire to walk. Esperar can mean to wait for, to hope. The example we have here, esperamos cenar. We are hoping, or we are waiting, cenar, to eat dinner, to have dinner. So because again, that to dine, to eat dinner, is the definition of the infinitive cenar. We don't add an extra word. We just conjugate esperar according to the person, and then add the infinitive. And necesitar, necesitan explicar. They need to explain. So again, just conjugate the second verb. Now notice we have 4 verbs that have parts underlined in red, and those are buscar, escuchar, esperar, and mirar. And so when we go to the next page, we'll understand what those parts in red. So unless referring to a person, unless the person is the object, and we'll come back to that in a second, buscar, escuchar, esperar, and mirar do not need to be followed by a preposition as they do in English. We say, I am listening to music. Well, escuchar means to listen to. So we're not going to put another to in there. So we say, escucho la música. I'm listening to the music. Escucho means is the listening to together. Buscar, to look for. Busco la tarea. I am looking for, so the for is part of buscar. I'm looking for the homework. Esperar means to wait for, so we don't have to add a word for. Espero el autobús. And mirar, to look. I'm looking at the chalkboard, the blackboard. Miro la pizarra. So those 4 verbs, that second helping word, that preposition is included in the definition of the infinitive of the verb. So we don't want to add an extra word to that. All right, so this is again a review of the first thing we talked about having 2 verbs together. When 2 verbs are used with no change of subject, the second verb is used kept in the infinitive, necesito estudiar, deseo hablar. And then a new concept is to make to make a sentence negative, you put the no before the conjugated verb. And in English, we would translate that as not. So, for example, we have a sentence, Alicia desea bailar ahora. Alicia desires, wants to dance now, versus Alicia no desea bailar ahora. Alicia doesn't want to dance now. So when we say doesn't in English, the does part is really just a helping verb. It really just indicates, it doesn't change the meaning of the sentence. So in Spanish, we only have to use the word no, and it's put before the conjugated verb. Okay, so that's how we make it negative. And we'll review that again in a sentence. All right, so we talked about the present tense. And we talk about what's called the simple present tense. That means it's one word that signifies a present tense. So, Paco trabaja en la cafetería. In English, we could translate that sentence with 3 different ways. Paco works in the cafeteria, Paco is working in the cafeteria, and Paco does work in the cafeteria. And in that case, number 3, the does is really just affirming that Paco does work in the cafeteria, as if he really does work, more like an affirmation. So all 3 of those ways in English are all reflected in that Spanish simple present tense we've been learning. So Paco trabaja en la cafetería. And then there's also a little connotation of what you've learned in the present tense that can represent a future tense. It's still the present tense, but the meaning has some futurality to it. So Marina viaja a Madrid. So Marina travels to Madrid. Then we put tomorrow, mañana. So now we're talking about a future event. So Marina viaja a Madrid mañana. Marina travels to Madrid tomorrow. She will travel to Madrid tomorrow. She is traveling to Madrid tomorrow. So the context there, the meaning is future tense, even though we're able to keep the verb just in the present tense. So we call that the simple present tense, because it's a simple future, because it's actually implied in just the present tense. So just some ways that we would use that differently in Spanish versus in English. All right, now we go back to what you've learned so far. That Spanish speakers will often omit the subject pronouns, the yo, tú, usted, él, ella, nosotros, ustedes, ellos, ellas, You can omit that because that's implied, it's implicit in that conjugated verb ending. So if I say, for example, hablo español, if you go back and look at your verb chart, the o, hablo, can only be used for I. So instead of having to say yo hablo español, we can just say hablo español because hablo means I speak. Okay, so that's inherent in that conjugated verb. Some of them may be a little bit different. For example, que enseñan, that first example we have there, que enseñan, remember, so enseñan is third person plural. It could be for ustedes, y'all, ellos, or ellas. And so if someone says que enseñan, you've got to get from the context. Are they talking about y'all, like including like what do you guys teach? Or are they saying what do they teach? And so typically then when that can be a little bit ambivalent, they'll add the pronoun in there. So que enseñan, pues ella enseña arte y él enseña física. So in this case, we're saying she teaches art, he teaches physics. So we can't just answer with one sentence, with one phrase, right? So we use our subject pronouns to give emphasis. But if someone says que enseñan, if they're including you, if that's ustedes, then you're going to answer back, pues nosotros enseñamos español. We teach Spanish, right? So you're going to get from the context of the sentence whether that can happen. And typically it's going to be that third person singular, because if someone says que enseña, that can be what does usted enseña, what does él enseña, what does ella enseña. So you're going to have to, in those cases, you would most likely use your subject pronoun unless it was really understood who was being talked to. But again, you don't have to include the subject pronouns and unless it's added for context. Okay, so here's our tarea, here's our practice here. I've got up in white, I've got the verb, including the meaning, and you're going to conjugate it 1 through 9, according to what you have there in the sentence, and then 10, 11, and 12, you're going to go ahead and just translate. So the first 9, you just need to conjugate the verb in the appropriate form, and then the last 3, go ahead and conjugate. You have all the words to be able to get those sentences, or to translate, sorry, you have all the words to be able to do that. So go ahead and pause the video, write these down, 1 through 12, write down your answers, and then resume the video, and we'll come back and we'll look at the answers together. Okay, you've pressed play, so I assume you're done. Let's go through this together. Número 1. Ustedes extrañan a sus padres, ¿verdad? We have our infinitive extrañar. We took off the AR. We get extrañi. And then we add the AN because that's a form for ustedes, the third person plural form. And our sentence is ustedes extrañan a sus padres. So clase repitan. Ustedes extrañan a sus padres. Muy bien. Número 2, llenar means to fill. We're going to take the llenar, take out the AR. We get llen. Los chicos llenan el cuestionario. So we have, again, third person plural because it's los chicos. That's they, ellos, ¿verdad? Número 3, necesitar, to need. Take out the AR, add on the correct ending. Tú necesitas un amigo, perdón. Clases repitan, tú necesitas un amigo. Muy bien. Número 4, buscar, to look for. We have la profesora y yo, so that's the equivalent of we. Buscamos un lápiz. Clases repitan, la profesora y yo buscamos un lápiz. Muy bien. Número 5, escuchar, to listen to. In the yo form, escucho. Clases repitan, yo escucho la música. Bien. Número 6, pagar, to pay. In the ustedes form. Ustedes pagan con dinero. Clases repitan, ustedes pagan con dinero. Muy bien. Número 7, pasar, to pass. Clases repitan, tú pasas el examen. Número 8, comprar, to buy. In the yo form. Clases repitan, yo compro un carro nuevo. Número 9, hablar, to speak. El form. Clases repitan, él habla con el presidente. Ok, muy bien. Número 10, Here we go, all on your own. Clases repitan. Javier habla con Juan. Get those J sounds. Javier habla con Juan. Número 11. Elena looks for the book. Remember, looks for is inherent in the verb buscar. Elena busca el libro. Clases repitan. Elena busca el libro. Muy bien. Número 12. Marta fills the paper. The verb for to fill is llenar. Marta llena el papel. Clases repitan. Marta llena el papel. Okay. If you didn't get those right, then pause, go back. Review, was that a vocabulary? Did you not get the correct verb, or did you not conjugate it right? Did you understand what the subject was and what form of conjugation to use? Okay, we're going to look at something that's super, super cool. We're going to look at the verb gustar, which is a regular AR verb, but it's used in a very different context. So the verb gustar means to be pleasing. The English equivalent is to like. And in English, we say, I like milk. In Spanish, we say, milk is pleasing to me. So you've got to remember, because it's different, the context, the meaning is the same. It means I like milk. But grammatically, it's milk is the subject of the sentence. Milk is pleasing to me. Okay, so keep that in mind. So for example, to express likes and dislikes, use me gusta. You've probably heard that before. It's a very common phrase. Me gusta, and then the article, and then the singular noun. Okay, so for example, me gusta el gato. I like the cat. Clase, repitan, me gusta el gato. Okay, now, because we said that in this case, the cat is the subject, the cat is pleasing to me. So the cat is a subject. If you were to say the cats, we would say the cats are pleasing to me, because cats is plural. So because that's the subject of our sentence in Spanish, we've got to change the verb now to make that third person plural form of the verb. So if we have gatos, los gatos, we're going to say me gustan, that's third person plural, me gustan los gatos. Okay, clase repitan, me gustan los gatos. Okay, so just to summarize that. So if the subject, the thing that is pleasing to the person, is singular, we use the phrase me gusta and a singular object, singular noun. If the things that are doing the pleasing are plural, then we're going to use me gustan or whatever, and los or las, and the plural form of the noun, because those are the subject of the sentence. So again, the idea is that I like, but the grammatically in Spanish, it's this thing is pleasing to whomever. So something else, note there, you can use the phrase a mí for emphasis, but never yo, because I'll show you in a sentence in a second. But for example, the sentences below, a mí me gusta el gato, the cat is pleasing to me. A mí me gustan los gatos, the cats are pleasing to me. So you can add a mí just to emphasize that's you, right? And you can't, a mí is optional, but the me is not. You can't say a mí gusta el gato. It's got to be me gusta el gato. But if you want to emphasize that, well, to me, I like cats, then you could add an a mí to it. But again, never yo. You can't say yo me gustan los gatos. The equivalent that I put there would be like the cats are did liking me. You can't, that just doesn't make any sense. So you can add a mí, but you can't use yo to indicate to you. So we got 4 examples there on the bottom. I'm going to have you repeat the 4 in Spanish. So clase repitan. Me gusta la música clásica. Okay, I like classical music. Me gustan las clases de español y biología. Okay, so we have las clases. We have 2 classes, so that's plural. And because they are the subject of the sentence, we've got to use gustan, because now it's third person plural. A mí me gustan las artes. That's like saying I like art. A mí me gustan las artes. You're emphasizing the a mí. I like the arts. A mí no me gusta el programa. I don't like the program. So just like we saw on the other slide, to make it negative, you just add no before the conjugated verb. So a mí or just no me gusta el programa. And that's how to make it a dislike or something that doesn't please you. Okay, so a couple again, just to give it to you in a different context. No me gusta, the article and a singular noun, or no me gustan, plural article, plural noun. No me gusta el gato y no me gustan los gatos. Something interesting here, if you say no me gustan los gatos, really, you could be saying I don't like the cats, like two specific cats, or you can just be saying cats in general. And I would say, no me gustan los gatos. I'm a dog person. No me gustan los gatos. Some of you may like cats, and that's okay. Again, you can add a mí for emphasis. A mí no me gusta el gato. A mí no me gustan los gatos. But never yo, okay? Just one more thing about it is just like we saw with the other four verbs on the big chart that we had underlined there, you can use gustar with another infinitive, as long as the same person is being pleased and doing the action. So you can say, for example, no me gusta cenar. I don't like to eat dinner. Me gusta cenar. In this case, that second infinitive really becomes a sentence, the subject of the sentence. So eating dinner is not pleasing to me. No me gusta cenar. So it is a second verb, you don't conjugate it, but that verb is also singular because it's one verb. So no me gusta cenar. So we have some examples here. No me gusta viajar en autobús. Clase repitan. No me gusta viajar en autobús. I don't like to travel by bus. Y clase repitan, me gusta cantar y bailar. Okay, and this is another example. You have sing and dance. That's two verbs, but it's still a single. We still keep gustar in the single form. You're saying singing and dancing is pleasing to me. Okay, so two different, one event, singing and dancing is pleasing to me. I like. So when you have two verbs together and the same person is being pleased by doing that thing, then you don't conjugate the second verb. So me gusta hablar español. No me gusta hablar español. Gusta hablar. Two verbs together. Okay, now it doesn't always have to be about you, right? Sometimes it can be about somebody else. So if you want to talk to somebody else about their dislikes, instead of saying me, you say te, te. And instead of saying a ti or a mí, you say a ti. And I've got a chart here in a second that'll show you that. But for example, we got, ¿te gusta la geografía? Do you like geography? Sí, me gusta. ¿Y a ti te gusta el inglés? So that's an example of when you're going to add that emphasis by saying, yeah, I like it, but do you like English, for example? So so you can have, and again, because the verb is gusta and it's because of that subject, it doesn't change to gustas, right, or anything else. The verb is always going to be the singular for first person or third person plural. I'm sorry, third person singular or plural, depending on what the subject is. But the te or the me doesn't change that. That's just the direct object, the person who is being pleased by it. Okay, sorry. I know I was speaking fast and that may have gotten confusing. So pause, rewind, listen to that a couple times and read the examples here. So let's look at the two examples on the bottom. Clase repitan. A mí me gusta el béisbol. A mí me gusta el béisbol. A ti te gusta el béisbol. So a ti and te both are forms of the pronoun tú. That means second person, the person you're talking to. Okay, so go back to my world famous verb tree. And in each of these cases, we have these different pronouns. So me is the same as a mí. Te is the same as a ti. We have le, which is the same for a usted, a él, a ella. Nos is the same as a nosotros or nosotras. Os is the same as a vosotros or a vosotras. Les is for a ustedes, a ellos, and a ellas. So me, te, le, nos, les are those indirect object pronouns. And then again, that part, the me, the te, the le, nos, and les, is not optional in these sentences. Clarifying it by using a mí or a ti or a usted, etc. Those are optional to give more emphasis. But the first one, the me, te, le, nos, or les, is obligatory. So, some examples. Clase, repitan. Nos gusta dibujar. We like to draw. Drawing pleases us. All you have to do is put the subject is still dibujar. Drawing pleases nos, us. Nos gustan las clases de español e inglés. So we have las clases, that's plural. So nos is us. Las clases nos gustan. The classes is the subject of the verb gustar, third person plural, and then nos is yes. So nos gustan las clases de español e inglés. No le gusta trabajar. Clase repita, no le gusta trabajar. Okay, so le can be for usted, él, or ella. So it could be you don't like to work, or he or she doesn't like to work. And again, it's going to be based on context. You'll be able to understand from the rest of the sentence, the rest of the dialogue, if for someone speaking to you or about him or about her. And then les gusta el arte. Clase repitan, les gusta el arte. Okay, art pleases y'all or them, male or them, female. So they like art or you like art, again, based on context. So to summarize, the me, te, le, nos, os, and les is not optional. It's always mandatory to be in these sentences. And then you can clarify by adding a mí, a ti, a usted, a él, a ella, a nosotros, a vosotros, a ellos, ustedes, ellas. And then gustar is the verb, but the subject is a thing that's doing the pleasing. And so the verb gustar conjugates according to what that subject is, singular or plural. You guys are amazing. All right, so again, just a summary in a different form. Gustar is used to express likes and dislikes. In English, we say it's if you like something, but grammatically, it's the thing is pleasing to the person. It has to agree with the subject, noun, or nouns that follow the things that are pleasing or being liked. It must include an indirect object pronoun, me, te, le, nos, os, or les. If it's followed by a second verb, an infinitive verb, then gustar will be conjugated to the singular form. Me gusta estudiar. Studying is pleasing to me, but you don't conjugate that second verb, you leave in the infinitive form. And then a review of what those pronouns are. So me gusta el pato, te gusta el pato, le gusta el pato, nos gusta el pato, os, les gusta el pato. If it's two ducks or more than two ducks, los patos. So then you have gustan. Me gustan los gatos, los patos. Te gustan los patos, le gustan los patos. Nos gustan los patos, les gustan los patos. And then if it's a second verb, me gusta mirar, kept in the infinitive form, los patos. I like to watch the ducks. Me gusta mirar los patos, te gusta mirar los patos, le gusta mirar los patos, nos gusta mirar los patos, os or les gusta mirar los patos. And then there are three other verbs that work the same way. Encantar, which means to really like, to be enchanted by something. If you remember when we did greetings on the very first week, encantado, encantada was one of those ways you could say pleased to meet you. It is pleasing to me to have met you. Interesar, to interest. So this book interests me. In English, we say I'm interested by this book or in this book, but in Spanish, this book interests me. And parecer means to seem or to resemble. So those are other verbs that follow that same pattern. All right, so here's your exercise. 6 sentences. I'm going to have you pause it, write down your answers to these 6 forms, and then come back and we'll look at your answers, okay? All right, let's see how you did. Número 1. Clase, repitan. Me gusta leer el periódico. So leer is the subject, right? That's an infinitive. We don't have to conjugate the second verb, and it's singular because it's a one verb. So me gusta leer el periódico. Número 2. Clase repitan. A nosotros nos gusta ir a la playa. Okay. Again, we have 2 verbs together. Gustar is the first verb, the second one's infinitive. So we conjugate it in the third person singular. Número 4. Clase repitan. A ti te gustan los zapatos. Okay, zapatos means shoes, and it's plural. So that's the subject of the sentence. So we conjugate gustar in the third person plural. Gustan. Muy bien. Número 4. Clase repitan. A ellos les gusta la comida. Okay, so the subject is la comida, the food, which is singular. So we conjugate gustar in the third person singular. Gusta. Muy bien. Número 5. Clase repitan. A Pablo le gusta jugar golf. Okay, so again, even though we have jugar, it's infinitive, we're going to conjugate gustar in the third person singular. And then a Pablo is él, right? That's the same as him, he. So our indirect, our object becomes le, the third person singular. Clase número 6, repitan. A mí me gustan las clases de español. Glad to hear you all say that. So las clases de español, las clases is the subject, it's plural. The Spanish classes are pleasing to me. I appreciate it. And that's how gustar comes in the third person plural. Okay, muy bien. Now we're going to do some more exercises. So you're going to number your papers from 1 to 6 and then from 1 to 5. And we're going to do a couple different things. Now, first one, you're going to take the ustedes as your subject, the verb, and then you got your other noun vocabulary, and you're going to form a sentence using those parts of speech there. So go ahead and pause, come back with 6 sentences, and then just go ahead and come back and we'll look at the answers for number 6, for those 6, and then we'll go on and do the next 5. So go ahead and pause and do these first 6 questions. Okay, muy bien. Let's see what we got. So sentences, number 1, ustedes practicar vocabulario. We would have, ustedes practican el vocabulario. So practicar is our infinitive. Take off the AR. You've got your stem. Ustedes, third person plural, adding your A and ending. Ustedes practican el vocabulario. Okay. Again, article el is necessary. So I probably didn't emphasize what it says in the instructions. Add any other necessary words. That's one of those ones that's necessary. Okay, número 2. ¿Preparas la tarea? It's a question, and it's in the to form. So, preparas la tarea. Número 3. La clase de español termina a las 11. Okay, clase de español is singular. So we have our third person singular form, and terminar, termina. Número 4. ¿Qué buscan ustedes? What are y'all looking for? ¿Qué buscan ustedes? Número 5. Buscamos una pluma, or buscamos la pluma, whatever you want to say there for your article. Okay, so remember, because buscamos can only be nosotros form, the nosotros is optional. If you put nosotros buscamos una pluma, that's fine too. It's not necessary and it's a little bit redundant, but it's certainly not wrong. Número 6. Yo comprar calculadora. Yo compro una calculadora. That's a hard word for me to say. It makes my tongue get tired. So you can have yo compro una calculadora, but again, since compro only can be for yo, it's not necessary. Okay, go ahead and pause again. We'll do the next 5 and we'll come back. Okay, the instructions for the second 5, sorry, I hope you read through them, is you're going to take that sentence and you're going to transform it into what is pleasing or what something or somebody likes. So, yo enseño en la universidad las clases. And the answer would be, me gustan las clases. Okay. Número 1, tú deseas mirar cuadros or paintings de Picasso. And the subject is el arte. You would have, te gusta el arte. Okay, so someone says, tú deseas mirar cuadros. What? Te gusta el arte. Número 2, soy estudiante de economía. Me gusta estudiar. Número 3, tú estudias italiano y español. And the prompt here is las lenguas extranjeras, which means foreign languages. You would say, te gustan las lenguas extranjeras. Again, gustan because it's lenguas and it's plural. Número 4, no descansas los sábados. You don't rest on Saturdays. You like to sing and dance. So, no descansas los sábados. Te gusta cantar y bailar. Número 5, busco una computadora. Me gusta la computación. Computación, computation, but it means computer work. So I'm looking for a computer because I like computer work. Okay, muy bien. Again, anything you missed, if it's little things, just figure out why. If it's big things, then pause, go back and figure it out till you master that concept. You've learned some really cool concepts today. Just how to conjugate verbs, AR verbs in the present tense alone, that's huge. Okay, what you're going to do now is listen to 8 sentences, and this is kind of different. I want you to draw a verb tree on your paper, and then you're just going to put 1 through 8 as you listen to these sentences in the corresponding box of where that goes. So I'm not going to let you see the sentences until after you listen to them all, because I want you to go from hearing it to knowing if that was a first person, singular, or plural, second person, third person, etc. Okay, so here you'll hear a native Spanish speaker in the recording.
1. Viaja a España mañana.
Viaja a España mañana. Okay.
2. Estudian matemáticas.
Estudian matemáticas.
3. ¿Esperas el autobús?
Esperas el autobús.
4. Escucho la radio.
Escucho la radio.
5. Compramos una mesa y unas sillas hoy.
Compramos una mesa y unas sillas hoy. Compramos.
6. Bailas muy bien.
Bailas muy bien.
7. Llegan a las 5.
Llegan a las 5.
8. Hablamos inglés y español.
Hablamos inglés y español. Okay, a little bit clunky there in the timing, sorry about that. But the idea is that each of these verbs, by listening to it, you should be able to identify, even without the pronouns being used, by listening to the verb, what part of speech it is. So notice that none of these had pronouns associated with it. They were all, you got all that context just from knowing how those verbs ended and what part is what person that is based on the verb ending. So good job. Again, go back and rewind, listen to it again, and go back and review anything that's not making sense. Let me know how you're doing. Sometimes I miss that interaction from being able to see your faces if you look confused, if you look lost. So make sure you're getting your questions to me. Email me, use the comment section on SuperSite, or request a Zoom time. But I want to make sure you guys are getting this. These are good concepts. You guys are bright. You'll pick these up easily. Just spend some time. Today you have some vocabulary to learn. You have all those verbs to learn. And then just memorize that. O, as, a, amos, an. And you'll be able to conjugate most of those regular AR verbs in the present tense and start formulating your own sentences. So great job. I'm excited for you guys. Thanks. Let me know how you're doing and what I can do to make this easier, and not the class easier, but to make these concepts easier for you. And I'll see you for the next lesson.